None of it matters now. Now, it's about who wants it more.
All right then, who's ready for a grand final? It has been a long, epic day. We've had stops, we've had pauses, we've had shocks, we've had upsets. It has been pretty tough on the mind. But this is esports, baby. That is what it's all about. The two teams back there, they have smiles on their faces. They're chatting, there was a couple of handshakes, but you know they're about to tear into each other. As they said on the desk, two #1 teams to win that trophy and a lion's share of $150,000. To win a world championship here on the first weekend of the Intel Extreme Masters is going to take skill and it's going to take mental strength. That is what it's about. So let's get this best of 3 underway for a world championship here in Katowice. So then, my friends in Poland, are you ready? I know you are, but let's go loud. It is late at night. We've been here all day. There's 2 teams backstage ready to play off in League of Legends. Are you ready? You damn right you're ready. So please welcome to the stage to play for that trophy, the Flash Wolves at G2.
There we have it, the 2 teams taking the stage for the final time here in the Spodek Arena at IEM Katowice. I'm so pleased that we've still got a crowd who are here and ready and willing to take this on, just like we are, just like the players are. This is going to be a great final, one to remember. And I am joined by Crumbs, obviously, as usual, and Broskurin. You must be exhausted after that last series. I mean, that must have taken it out of you.
And again, we kind of touched about this on the cast, but the fact is that Flash Wolves, if I'm exhausted, I know they're exhausted.
Yeah.
They just came from their semifinal into their final. Meanwhile, G2 sitting backstage just trying to find places where they can poke in on those weaknesses.
But it's only when you reach the bottom of your tank that you really feel that euphoria, that time to come back into it where nothing else matters.
Euphoria, right? Euphoria.
It could very much be.
Oh, I'm so biased.
But ultimately, despite the roller coaster of this tournament, despite the fact that, people wanted to pump the brake on EU, that there was a bunch of, the gap is widening jokes of Korea putting up such a strong front, this is what a lot of people actually predicted the final to be. #1 seed from LMS, #1 seed from EU, and in the end, these 2 titans will clash.
Do you know what's so funny to me, guys?
Oh, there's a lot.
Yeah, probably. I laugh all the time, right? I just laughed at myself. I think it's through the...
Are you okay?
I'm going to be awful this series. I think what's so funny is that throughout this week, with all the predictions that we had, we never really expected to find our way here. But at the start of the week, we said yes, but during the week, we were like, no, never going to happen. And then we finally found this G2 versus Flash Wolves final.
And for me, it comes down to consistency, and these 2 were frankly the most consistent team. Again, you can say that maybe Korea had higher highs, but they definitely also had those big lows in performances like Mickey in the last game.
Now, it's a final, and we have 2 casters deserved of bringing that final. Let's hand over to them at the front of the stage. It's Pyrotechnics and Papa Smithy.
Gentlemen, man, I think I speak for everybody, not just here in the Spodek Arena, but all around the world right now. We are ready for this final. This is going to be a big one between Flash Wolves and G2 Esports, Papa Smithy.
Yeah, it's just such an honor to be casting a tournament steeped in tradition, many great champions as far back as CJ Entus Blaze. Last year, of course, SK Telecom T1. Now potential for a European team or even an LMS team to come home with the trophy. Exciting stuff.
Absolutely, and they've definitely had a long journey, not just to get to this final stage, but all across the board, some redemption stories for G2 Esports. Flash Wolves looking to take a big title for themselves and prove that not only they, but the LMS is a strong region.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's pretty hard to call. I don't envy the job of the analysts. We get to call the actions, so that's what I'm excited about.
Well, and speaking of those analysts, let's send it back to them to get ready to start things off.
Guys, you look fantastic. Go get behind stage and get ready to cast this game because it is going to be a big, big, big series. We could even see it go all 3. We've seen every series go all 3 today. We have really stretched it out across this day. Now, we're going to be moving towards pick and ban phase, and this is where I love to throw it to you guys to tell me what me and the viewers are likely to expect here.
LeBlanc banned on red.
I mean, I could have
Definitely. Varus probably banned. Shen also removed from the table. We probably expect Flash Wolves to get rid of it. And the rest, up in the air. These teams really like to gamble with these picks back and forth and trade power picks.
And that's the question, does anyone have anything left in the tank? Are there any secret strategies? We've already seen G2 kind of reach deep, look towards that Leona pick to counter out the Varus and the Syndra. Do they have something else up their sleeve? And do Flash Wolves have anything left?
It's not about how much you got left in the tank, it's how many miles per gallon you get for what you've got.
What are they, a Prius?
How many tank puns are we going to make during this analysis
As
segment?
many as I can.
G2 have shown us a couple of innovations already. Like you said, the Leona, Ari, not really an innovation, but it's the first time we saw it. It's a little bit off meta. Flash Wolves haven't really shown us anything extra special yet. If they've got something, now is that time to bring it out.
The Flash Wolves have also kind of returned to their domestic form. They came into this tournament pretty hot and heavy in that smash, and then kind of teetered out a little bit. A lot of mid-game indecision, late-game problems, and this is what they're known for on the international stage. So that's a bit concerning. It was kind of like, oh wow, Flash Wolves, they look super impressive. And suddenly that's starting to not seem so.
Looks like they shoved all their troubles under the rug and it might have been starting to come out. But the draft gives me a lot of hope for them because a lot of these teams have struggled with it, although the one that really hasn't is their opposition. G2's draft have been consistently either equal or better than their oppositions.
And I feel like these teams have kind of gone reverse, whereas Flash Wolves started really fast and now have kind of teetered out or plateaued a bit. G2 started really slow, obviously snowballing Flash Wolves, and have sped up.
So I want to look at some matchups specifically here, and I think the big questions that we've talked about have been Trick. He's had some up and down performances, and until that last series, we said that Kasa was the steamrolling jungler that was dominating everybody. Now we've seen he has got those weaknesses in his kit, in his playstyle as well. That big matchup between Trick and Kasa, I think, is going to be a determining factor of this series.
Absolutely. The junglers determine so much, but it's also about the picks that they go for and what they build their team around, because if we see another Ivern on the player that is capable of carrying, you're going to be very underwhelmed. But if we see the Lee Sins, those Kazakhs, those picks can do so much work, that's what we want to see, because that allows an extra player to really activate themselves and do whatever they want on the Rift.
And I want to extend the conversation to the 2v2, not jungle mid, but jungle support. Swordart and Karsa have shown that they are so pivotal in laying down that vision that when Flash Wolves look hot, it starts with those two teaming up, and then kind of Maple takes advantage of it. And then you also have to look at Mythy and Trick. They are constantly together, always backing at the same time, always making sure that they're doing the dandy Mata best friends forever invade. And so I think it's actually really a clash of support and jungle, and who's going to win out in the vision war.
Backing together is such an important concept when you want to keep the pace of the game and maintain that control, because that gives less breathing room for the opponent to really counteract that vision, to really go for their own plays. And if they can consistently do that with the picks that they go for, because they like to go with that Graves, that early tracker's knife that really allows you to map out your next play, then they can be in a very controlling position and force the Flash Wolves to really not do anything at all, as we've seen them do.
And there's very different styles in terms of how the bot lanes like to approach gaining this vision. The Flash Wolves will always go for the pushing power of like the Ashe and the Karma, whereas Mythy has been trending more towards the Tahm Kench. So will they give that up, and can they exploit it elsewhere on the map?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to find out right now, because we're into Champion Select between G2 and Flash Wolves. G2 take the blue side to begin with here. Flash Wolves on that red. Syndra, Rengar, Varus all off the table straight away between these two teams.
You gotta ban the Syndra. The Flash Wolves' 2 victories over HUK came off the hands of Maple having Syndra. Get rid of it, remove the immediate comfort pick, force them to show what their hand is, because the Orianna looked underwhelming.
I actually find this interesting though. Normally the Asian teams really don't care for Camille. They'll let it drop through the bans. We've seen it drop through multiple times in this tournament.
Even that last series.
Yeah, but giving a lot of respect to expect. Now he has been known that he can play that dual tanky as well as carry style, so it does make sense. Or maybe it's a flex pick.
Looks like Karma, the final ban here for G2.
That's smart.
She has been seeing a little bit more play over that last series, and I know it's something that you were very happy about, Crumbs.
It's also the pick that was played in both of Flash Wolves' games against HUK. It's a tremendous support. It really is very flexible in what you can build around her. So immediately removing what the Flash Wolves' comfort picks and just saying, bring out something new.
Final ban here for Flash Wolves. Do you think about the Jace here in this? Oh, actually, LeBlanc. Oh, LeBlanc's open. LeBlanc is open.
Perks has had a tremendous game on LeBlanc in the EU LCS, so this is really just playing with fire at this point.
They're thinking about the Rumble for Expect, but LeBlanc is open.
It technically could be a flex pick. Rumble also does decent into the jungle, but this makes much more sense.
Yeah, there we go. LeBlanc makes it through for G2 Perks, our G Fuel MVP. If he's going to step up at any time right now on a champion that can solo carry, as we have seen, LeBlanc is it.
You've got maybe Rise and Kassadin into LeBlanc, but you're really just asking for trouble here. He can carry. He has been the pinnacle of G2 for this entire tournament. Sell for one poor base against LeBlanc himself. Really risky here.
Now, Rise does have a decent matchup or trades into LeBlanc, especially if he goes Courage of the Colossus. He can also match a lot of her wave clear. That said, he's more about prioritizing that early back for tier. He's going to spike later than her, and he'll usually be slower on the rotation with Realm Warp, but there are options for counterplay.
Now, this is the reverse matchup that we saw G2 face into the Rocks Tigers when they played. I believe it was in the group stages still. And actually, you know, Perks didn't perform well on Rise versus the LeBlancs. Now he's going into the Rise as the LeBlanc here.
Yeah, and I think here what G2 needs is either a Maokai or a Malzahar. Make sure that you deny the picks that are going to be very difficult for LeBlanc to deal with. That way you enable her to really just do whatever she wants across the map. And if you take away those picks, they're also really useful against, wow, just completely different. The Tahm Kench, I mean, that is also... Not sure what to say. I feel like the Maokai Malzahar would have just been really important. If Flash Wolves take it away, that LeBlanc, every time she distortions in, she's just going to get ulted.
I guess we've talked a lot about pushing power here and pushing priority. You're now potentially going to see these bot lanes locked in. I mean, for Skewin, who has that advantage? If this is the Malzahar, which it is, who has the advantage? Sivir can do a lot by herself, but...
The thing is yeah, Malzahar can help you push lane because it is two range champions versus melee range, but Malzahar's real job is to kind of threaten you when you step up. I mean, the scary thing about him is that if you step out of position, you know, he'll chunk your health and then win through the trading war.
Okay.
So laning against Sivir, I'd still give it to her because usually when you're against Sivir, you're against the creeps.
The Malzahar is exactly the pick that the Flash Wolves struggled against versus H2K. They had no idea how to deal with it, and so by denying it themselves, they think that the pick is that important that it completely lost them one game. Deny it right here, and they probably feel really good about this one so far because they had the Tahm Kench into Malzahar that first time around.
So, Ivan, the first ban for Flash Wolves on second rotation here. Don't think that we were too bothered by the G2 tricks Ivan previously, so they might not be too stressed about that. Lee Sin is going to be banned by G2. Looks like the jungle pool is getting limited by these two teams.
And this is fairly abstract, but I do like the fact that they're kind of pinching the possible tank jungler that's been left in this tournament. I mean, Rek'Sai hasn't seen much success, and the thing is if you choose someone like a Kha'Zix or like an Elise or someone to get to that backline, because they have the Malzahar, they can deny that. So going a tank jungler like the Ivern could have been a little bit more viable, I guess, or a bit more threatening.
Graves now banned. This is definitely starting to limit options from that jungle. Depends what G2 bans here to see what Flash Wolves end up first picking. You would imagine they might want to secure one of the top tier junglers on their first rotation of this next pick.
However, the first rotation does go to the hands of the Flash Wolves, so removing the Maokai, make sure that the Flash Wolves don't have that pick against LeBlanc right now. And the Flash Wolves now are left with the Kha'Zix as being the only left physical damage jungler. So a great pick here overall, just does a tremendous amount of damage. And because there's so many tanks left, they should probably feel pretty good about this one.
But now I'm super curious what G2 are going to round out their comp with. They already have the great foundation of kind of a 1-3-1 or a 1-4 composition. If LeBlanc ever gets kill priority over everyone, she's very safe in a side lane. Sivir can keep you safe in the mid lane. Tahm Kench, obviously, with his semi-global presence on ultimate. So it's like, what's the cherry on top?
Now, they're looking like they're thinking about Renekton. I potentially would have been leaning maybe towards a Nautilus top. I don't know whether that's risky into a blind situation, but they're going to go for the Renekton, who has, you would say, decent matchups in most cases here.
Yeah, Renekton's pretty great for the early game. You can push your lane tremendously, and when you pair it with Elise, you have a really powerful early game composition. Lanes that threaten a lot of kill pressure, and that means that Flash Wolves are going to be put on the back foot from the very get-go.
It does front load them a bit more towards that early and mid game, but it also gives them good points of bridging power. You know, the fact that they can look towards Renekton and Elise to dominate early game before handing off the baton to LeBlanc in mid game and then handing it off to Sivir in late game.
Nautilus, the final lock-in here, and that rounds out both of our compositions. Now, my wonderful, beautiful analysts, I'm going to hand it over to predictions. Crumbs,
It's a thrilling matchup, really. Two compositions going for very different things, and that always creates a tremendous amount of pressure. I'm going to go with G2 here. The LeBlanc is just such a tremendous power pick right now. I just can't see them getting past it.
I have to agree, and I think G2 have a composition that can really dominate a map, and Flash Wolves struggled with that against H2K. This can punish them in the right places.
Right now, before we hand over to our casters, I'm going to give a shout out to our partner here at the Intel Extreme Masters, The Score Esports. If you want to follow all of the updates, live scores, news, guides, everything you could ask for in relation to League of Legends esports, The Score Esports is there for you on Android, iOS, the website, thescoreesports.com, and their YouTube channel too. So go and check them out. Now, without further ado, it's time to hand over to our wonderfully talented casters for this series. It will be Pyrotechnics and Papa Smithy.
Thank you very much, Scoundrel. Very talented man yourself. But sitting next to me, Papa Smithy, I know you are very ready to get into this finals matchup, and what a storied tournament this has turned out to be, with G2 Esports and Flash Wolves vying for the top title.
11:25 p.m. local time. We will kick off our first game of this series. Teams looking to join the likes of Blaze, KTB, TSM, and SKT, who have all been crowned here at Katowice. Drafts come in, and hey, LeBlanc made it through picks and bans for the second time this tournament. And Perks certainly remembers, because he was on the opposite side of this matchup last time.
Let's see if he can make some magic with it this time around. The Flash Wolves, they'll have to contend with this early game snowballing team to try and put a stopper in G2 Esports. Let's see if they can do it. It is a best of 3 for this final. 3 games, the maximum we could see for the rest of this tournament. But the winner will walk away the lion's share of that prize money, the name engraved on the trophy, and we'll see who it is right here from Katowice, Poland. It's the final matchup, G2 Esports and Flash Wolves.
Plenty of loyal fans have stuck around a long, long day. Speaking of long days, you saw Perks beforehand when he was accepting the G Fuel MVP, talking about he had already been awake 18 hours. Just think of call times. G2 were here 10:30 a.m. for the first match of the day. Flash Wolves got in at 12:30. We are now very much in the late night, and it's going to be a really interesting one. It's a sort of series where a couple of things don't go your way in the early game. It's a bit late. The reflexes are a little bit lost. It's a bit interesting to see how the early game plays out, because snowballing with the comps we see is certainly a massive possibility.
It's the type of games that really test your mettle. It's not only a big stage, but as you said, a very, very long day. Mistakes can, in fact, be made. Betty and Sorda are hoping just that happens as they bait a trap on the bottom side. Otherwise, all's clear. Line of scrimmage for both teams.
So we're going to probably see a pretty slow start. We should talk about where these teams have come from and what we're seeing. We'll start with Flash Wolves. So we see Nautilus sauntering onto the Rift in the top lane. I mean, Flash Wolves, the big thing for them, I think honestly the common topic between two teams is redemption in some ways. And the big story for Flash Wolves and the LMS region, think back to Worlds when we're like, okay, the Dark Horses are here. It's Flash Wolves, AHQ again. They're going to surprise us. We don't really scout them that well. It wasn't their tournament. LMS in general really underperformed. Neither team crowning themselves in glory. The Korean Slayers, Flash Wolves have so many different adjectives and sub-names, but it was a poor tournament for them. And guess what? We come into another tournament, again, Dark Horses. We're talking about Europe. We're talking about Korea. And LMS, once again, makes it to a final and trying to redefine kind of recent history because they're looking for a big result.
You definitely can't sleep on a team like the Flash Wolves. A lot of people have speculated, you know, even coming into this, oh, well, how strong can the LMS be because they just hadn't performed on international stage for some time. But Flash Wolves had honestly dominated that region. They have done it for some time. Their biggest competition being AHQ Esports. It's hard to tell where a team is really rated internationally based on that domestic performance.
I mean, the Flash Wolves have become synonymous with the LMS for a couple of years now. Back in the day, when it was the GPL, it was all about Taipei Assassins, Season 2 World Champions. It's evolved into Flash Wolves. They've kind of been synonymous with the league in many ways. And the advantage they have, of course, is that, sure, maybe they top out their region. Maybe they are that much better than the second best team in the LMS. But guess what? Geographically, access to Korean scrims, access to other teams. Talking to Stake, they take any scrims they can get into regional and in their own region. So they have those chances, and they're just trying to be great and relevant on the world stage, not just dominating LMS.
Yes, indeed. We'll see if they can make that happen this time around. Jungler sniffing around up towards topside, but not the normal wet noodle fight you see up there with Renekton in the mix. Down in bot, Sven and Mithy trying to push back against Betty and Sword Art here. These guys have had their share of struggles on this stage so far. Not just today. Sven and Mithy have been making a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes. And you talk about redemption.
G2 has an entire squad. This is a team that definitely has been looking for that on the big stage. They finally conquered their demons, and it started with defeating Kongdu Monster a few days ago, but they lost to the Flash Wolves in their opening match.
I mean, G2 with the feel-good story. When they did so well in spring of 2016 after being promoted, everyone was like, okay, this is our team, we're excited about it. Then MSI happened, then Worlds happened, and it's kind of been one series at a time for G2 this particular tournament. Lost their first game, as you mentioned, went on from there, and it's always been, I think everyone kind of has their hearts in their mouths when they watch G2, especially European fans, because they have those high expectations. They want to believe in G2, but they've been hurt before. They're trying to really meter themselves. They've now made it to a final, very much in with a shot against Flash Wolves, and it's fun when redemption is the common shared story, and one team will have to go with just a little bit less redemption than the other.
Well, it's still a very slow start, as you said, but I think we'll be seeing a lot of redemptions built as well. Supporting. Maybe not this game, but
a little bit on the nose,
I'm
Pyra. Come on, it's
it.
going to be a long series. Come on, we're
I'm going to ease into this one, but I really think that G2, they've shown that they really, really not just want this tournament, but want to silence those critics, and they've done a lot of that already, but it really has to be not whomping Flash Wolves, not beating them down, but just being able to take the win, because it was a long, drawn-out series against the Rocks Tigers.
I'd take some whomping. We have seen very little whomping today. It's been some very long
Close games.
Close games, absolutely. Some of them have been very sound. Other ones like, I don't know about this one. I'll just think about the next game, one at a time. But there's been some great stuff. There's been some solid macro. But these are explosive team comps. A lot of pick on both sides. Look at Flash Wolves, single target damage for days, single target lockdown for days. And you can say pretty much the same thing about G2. So again, we expect this one to get rolling fast. And for now, we see some invades, but still laning phase, all in told.
Yeah, level 5 on the mid laners right now. Maple gets Perks caught up in a Rune Prison for just a second. Tries to step forward, can't quite land any combos on him just yet. Still waiting for access to his ultimate. He does land a chain. We'll definitely be keeping an eyeball on those junglers, see where they make plays. When you have a pick like LeBlanc, you definitely want to sit mid. Make sure you can get that LeBlanc snowballing ahead, get yourself into a solid mid game, but Trick hasn't really been there that much. He's been going on invades, as you've been saying.
I don't know much about how much you see of LeBlanc in EU LCS. I imagine it's not that much.
It's been quite a bit.
Very popular ban. In Korea, we've seen it twice, no more than that. The big story here is, like, people remember LeBlanc, but we don't get to talk about it because it's always banned. And the thing about LeBlanc is, gone are the days of her being a single target burst assassin with a bit of poke. She has low cooldowns. Now she has the wave clear. Now she can do all manner of things. Hell, she has an ultimate that allows her to show up and deceive in multiple lanes.
Forcing flashes for free and things like that.
Exactly, and her power level is really high in many ways, but she's still a mastery champion. I don't feel like we've seen a LeBlanc yet in the 7.1 onwards meta actually show us the complete maximum of the LeBlanc pick. I'm waiting to see some creative stuff. If we see Maple on LeBlanc, always a staple of his, that'll be exciting, but Perks is no slouch. 7-1 career on LeBlanc. Obviously hasn't had a lot of access to the latest major rework of LeBlanc, but we're always ready to be impressed.
But he has definitely stepped up in this tournament. It's not just the reason for giving him that MVP award, but he's played out of his mind, and I think honestly just as the heart and soul of this team, because you usually look to this squad and you think, okay, well, you've got Sven and Mithy.
I think you include Trick there as well.
I think you include Trick as well, for sure. But you have like kind of an all-star lineup. Expect, okay, maybe he's a little middling for the rest of the team, but he's still looking well. And let's see if he can make a big name for himself there, forcing the flash onto MMD, and Trick is right at his back for first blood.
Really nice pathing coming through from Trick through the enemy jungle. You can see lighted with blue wards, no defensive vision for MMD. Too far pushed up. He had a pink ward or a control ward, wasn't safe in it. You pick Renekton for the early push. Nautilus has that too, but this man rules the early game. Didn't go for the call, went for the more aggressive build. Triple longswords, just balancing them all between his blades, and first blood. Nice snowball in the top lane. Just waiting to see if Perks can match that, and G2 can get it going.
Well, they got one kill onto Trick. Let's see if he takes a trip into the mid lane next. Right now, Karza is looking to get a counter jungle of his own on Sven and Mithy getting pushed a little bit back, but their job is going to be survive this lane phase. They don't have to be the biggest of carries, because they're looking for expecting Trick to do a lot of that job.
And look, I think all teams are going to be taking some messages home. Obviously, we have a lot of regions coming here, learning each other regions' techs, some regions favoring some picks. For example, LMS famously not interested in the Camille. Seems like there are no big Camille players in the LMS, but banning it away as a respect in this particular series. We've seen it against teams that they actually respect to have Camille players, it'll be banned, but otherwise, it's been left open. The tech I want to talk about is the EU's lack of priority for Ashe. No Ashe picks, it seems, from the European teams. Talking to players, and they just don't value the pick. To me, I mean, in Korea, it's #1 or #2 AD carry behind the like of Varus, but it seems like very sparingly picked, and we see so much of this Sivir into Jhin, which to me is more of a situational pick.
Yeah, it definitely seems more comfortable for the European squads to pick a Sivir and just kind of fall into, a wave push holding pattern. We haven't really seen the likes of the Ziggs come out as an option to do that as well, so they prefer this more traditional pickup, but no picks on the Ashe. Perkz is going to follow through over on a Maple, doesn't get too much damage, and he pops back as he sees Karza coming for him. Still been a quiet early game, only that kill up top, courtesy of Trick and Expect. Big farm differential up there. MMD has actually been forced back quite a bit.
Karza's still been able to really farm pretty safely. You consider the laning matchups, Renekton with the push advantage, LeBlanc with the kill pressure. This is kind of Trick's playground in the early game to go and invade. We already saw the successful gank top. He's pinked out on a ward, so will be spotted in his current mission to the top lane. Karza's been happy to farm, and with that information, always good to see. Very ordered play from a team. They know there's no way Elise can be here to secure the Drake, so why not start stacking?
Get themselves that regen early on. It's very valuable in the first 15 minutes of the game, especially in Karza on a champion like Kha'Zix, able to solo that one out. It's going to be harder and harder for G2 to try to find an extended skirmish in this early game.
And you got Ryze, who loves to stack up the tier. Anything where you need to do consistent spell cast to start the scaling war is going to be very happy. Went for the Megatron just before finishing the Rod of Ages, so just trying to survive the laning phases. Okay, so they're trying to respond here. They know Nautilus had to hang back, went for a back. They can get first pick commit to be big, and speaking of big.
But they got to be careful not to give up a kill, and Perkz is going to have to flash and double distort in, or out rather, as he got exhausted on Sword Art had the Nether Grasp. Meanwhile, MMD got back up the top lane, but that tower is nearly gone. Sends a depth charge, and Trick is low, but he turns into a spider, sinks the fangs in, and he goes up in the air. What goes up must come down, and MMD is going back to Fountain.
Didn't really seem like he judged the situation very smartly. Turret was so low, it was inevitably going to go down, but just gives his life as well. We might start seeing these small mistakes. Remember, it is late. They've just come off a series. You think he'd still be warmed up and ready to go, but complete misjudgment from MMD.
Sometimes hard to keep your head in those situations. MMD found out the hard way, so a big gold advantage G2's way with that first brick and the kill picked up. It also opens up this side of the map, and Expect shows no signs of stopping on the push.
As you say, the pressure game is exactly what the Renekton wants to play. Looks like Black Cleaver Rush rather than necessarily the Tiamat was already winning the wave clear wars against Nautilus, which is no mean feat. Can just max the Riptide and do just fine, but this is exactly what G2 want. Renekton pushing in top, Sivir pushing in bottom, so already isn't being answered. Kill pressure not enough from the likes of Jhin and Malzahar, and LeBlanc with kill pressure in mid. So you go all early game, and this is exactly what you pick for, as they have complete control of the map.
It's nice to see the change-ups, too, and adaptations in the way that they've done the pick and ban. Because G2, like a lot of the European teams, were falling for the Rengar bait early on in this tournament. It was punishing them. It punished them famously against the Flash Wolves in their first game of the tournament. But now they've turned this into the Renekton pickup, something that Expect had not done in Europe up until this point.
I mean, you think back to that match, we talked about it, given that it was the previous time these two teams met. Maple considering his options bot, but that game was kind of uncharacteristic from G2. Again, first game of the tournament for both, and we saw specifically Sven struggling in lane, gave up that 2v2 kill. We saw that again from him today. That's been a big surprise in that regard. G2 just kind of got bled out of the game. A couple of kills came in, and Flash Wolves never looked like losing. That's why I like how this time, go for the earliest game comp possible, get some leads, get some confidence, and get out the specter of that first loss.
Yeah. And change up the way they're playing, too. They've been famous in LCS for trying to play the control game and not give up advantages, but build themselves small, incremental gold leads and then overwhelm after the fact that the opponent could really do nothing about it. This time, they've kind of gone all out, saying, screw it, this is the finals. At the Intel Extreme Masters, Katowice, we want to win, and we want to make a big statement. It's starting to be an explosive one. 2 kills to 0, not that heavy, but they're building that gold lead, and there's not too much recourse for the Flash Wolves. Let's see if they can find something back. Betty taking a little bit low from the Boomerang Blade.
And it's just been such adaptation from every team. It really feels like the meta has developed. Tournament metas are a very common thing. A Worlds meta comes out. Every tournament has their own big picks. The teams are only really scrimming against each other because of proximity, so metas are very likely to draw. But I mean, G2 have been so hard to read. We haven't necessarily seen the control G2. In fact, I'd say the most common thing we've seen from G2 is their Jace early game comps where they really slam lanes, 27-minute victories, really decisive play. Funnily enough, Unicorns were the team that were rocking the more methodical play. Not to say we haven't seen that from G2, but a lot of teams have gone against type. So it's why, at least on the analyst test, I found it a really big struggle because I was like, okay, this is what we've seen before. Actually throw that out the window. It's going to be a series on its own merits.
Yeah, nice to see the adaptation, the variation from both the teams. Flash Wolves, for their part, definitely looking a little bit more comfortable with comps that they've drafted, putting a lot on Maple, but it's kind of always the way. Karza on this Kha'Zix has not had the same level of impact that Trick's Elise has. And speaking of Trick,
I mean, they just own this topside jungle. They've already taken the top turret. Nautilus is, for some reason, is destroyed outer turret, and here comes some friends.
Expect slices and dices his way in. Karza, he finds Perks on the side of it there, but the curtain call is getting opened up by Betty. One shot, the second's going to miss, but Expect finds himself without a whole lot of allies here, and now Trick is stuck in Rune Prison, surrounded by Flash Wolves, and he came to the wrong neighborhood.
A delayed lane swap actually coming out from Flash was moment that we saw the open up from Jhin. I put 2 and 2 together. They sack bot lane turret to do this, but they want to pressure what looked like a pretty inevitable play with the Nautilus. Sven solos down the turret. He'll push in, so they still lose a turret for a single kill. The Flash Wolves weren't content with extended laning phases, but you have to say, G2, it's LeBlanc with teleport. It's a Renekton already with a pushing advantage. I think they're pretty happy to open up the side lanes and continue to play their game.
Yeah, focusing on the objectives. And sometimes you have to sacrifice the kill. I'm sure Trick wasn't too happy with the fact of how it ended, but it could have been a lot worse for G2. So 2-1 is the kill score right now. Flash Wolves, they have that one dragon. There's a cloud coming up in about a minute's time. But G2, they've now shifted their attention towards the bottom side of the map. Wards for both teams, however. So we could see a skirmish.
From here, what G2 need to do is to really focus on that vision line. If they can start setting up control wards more advanced of the river and actually start to always guarantee first rotation, you're already at a point where, I mean, Nautilus has got a bit of armor. He can probably now stand up mostly to the Renekton, except over time the Black Cleaver Shred will come in relevant, but certainly no answer to the LeBlanc. So putting the LeBlanc and rotating around there. Picks are so easy when you have LeBlanc, Renekton, Elise, even Tom Kench is useful there. Speaking of picks.
Yep, he might go, and that is why you buy the QSS.
Very early, too.
Out, yeah.
Very early.
He's playing scared because of what happened earlier in the mid.
You say scared. I think he's playing smart.
There we go.
The reason why, and I agree, I think calculated is the right word, is that they want to go 1-3-1. The map is open. They have very easy to escape champions in both Renekton and the LeBlanc. Go for the QSS. Allow you to enter lane even in a 1v2 and no kill pressure involved is... And now we see Sven and Maple. Eventually, there's a lot of Flash Wolves in mid.
Just expect. Okay, Sven goes on the hunt. He has to burn his flash, and Karza follows him for a quick kill. In comes Mithy, though. Might be a bit too late. He's
all alone.
Brings himself no allies to the party, and there are a lot more Flash Wolves there. Few ultimates burned. G2 find themselves down an 80 carry.
This time the picks work. It isn't over in the top lane where they'd already lost a lot of objectives. Perks couldn't make it over. Nice map play from the Flash Wolves, but they're still looking to get some objectives. Cloud Drake's a start, but it's not what they're looking for. They need some of the standing gold to match the turrets.
Yes, they do. Perks, he's hanging around here, seeing if he can maybe do some damage to the dragon. There is still the smite available for Karza, so there's really not much of a chance, and it gets secured up by him. 16.5 minutes into this game is 2-2 on kills, but there is still that gold gap to contend with. Trick and Expect, not content to let anything go, are going to try to get themselves a Rift Herald. Makes a lot of sense when they're going to be having that split pushing Renekton.
It's a super high priority Rift Herald. When you have this comp with Renekton early game, LeBlanc early game, I mean, Renekton's basically the LeBlanc of top lane when it comes to trying to dominate lane, especially even more old LeBlanc than new, I guess, which has a bit more flexibility. But Renekton does one thing, can push, has some kill pressure in the laning phase. Perks. We're gonna have to escape here. He's actually pretty intimidated by Maple in the side lane, who's now got the Rod of Ages stacking. The stacking will come in, the scaling will come in, things will get worse for G2, so I like the priority on something like Rift Herald.
And Swordart's been hunting him this entire game too, so he's hanging around on the bottom side once again. He's got his Nether Grasp up and available. Obviously Perks has this QSS, but he's gonna have a hard time dealing in the 1v2, and there's a lot of Flash Wolves wards down here. It seems like they're intent on keeping Perks locked up as much as they can.
And the intent should also be on keeping that ward line where it is now, in the river. Sure, it's around Baron. Baron doesn't spawn for a couple of minutes. Moving vision forward will allow for the quick collapse. They've even got the Sivir, who they get a couple control wards down. Elise, LeBlanc, Tom Kench, Renekton launched into a fight. 1 CC should be enough to delete a single member, and then they're going to look for the structures. So the early game's still pretty ordered from G2, but they need to keep this vision control up and have something like Baron as a backup win condition, because for now, inner turrets is what they should be shooting for.
Yeah, still need to knock down the outer in the mid, but they have opened up the side lanes. We're 18 minutes on the clock. Perkz still heading down towards the bottom. He has his Morello, Namicon. Looking to do some light reading.
There we go.
Starts pushing out. Yep. They're going to be able to send the dual lane to deal with him right now. A lot of G2 members stacking around mid. Let's see what happens here. Perkz goes in. Betty takes a big chunk of damage, but he's right on top of Sword Art once again. The curtain call is going to get opened up. Let's see if Perkz is going to be putting on his dancing shoes. Silence, stopped up. He goes in for Sword Art, but Betty blows him away.
Just too many members in the bot lane. Red side wards pretty much lighting up the red side jungle of G2. And I think one thing you can say about G2, they're not doing anything on the map to counter it. They were in mid lane, did a bit of pushing, looked pretty disorganized. So it should just be a kill and a turret for Flash Wolves. The first time they've traded up in objectives all game.
G2, they just didn't have a response this time around. And yeah, Flash Wolves, they're looking good.
Solo gold here
on the
for
money.
Betty.
He's going to get a lot now. Still sitting on his boots, and the Yomu's Ghostblade, but he's going to let the minions finish the job, and that's a nice cool 350 that he's going to be able to spend on a shiny new item as he backs right on top of Perkz' corpse.
Able to match pretty much in items when it comes to the Sivir as well, just 100 gold between the two. G2 have played this game almost exclusively around their power of their Renekton in the top side. Sacking bot lane in a lot of ways, but teleport on LeBlanc, so she'll be able to visit bot and buff an easy objective, but if you have such a snowball comp, and you start getting contested for the easy objectives, this is a little bit when the sinking feeling starts to enter the minds. They don't have LeBlanc to look for those big picks. Suddenly the initiation is an Elise Cocoon and Renekton getting in melee range. Because LeBlanc's on the other side of the map, things are a little bit more of a struggle to push the next objective. And if this is the gold lead in 3 minutes, in 5 minutes, and especially in 10 minutes, that's when the worry really creeps in for G2.
Yeah, Snowball. Not stalled out, but it's definitely slowed down, and the Flash Wolves are finding it more and more comfortable to play around this map and nab some vision back for themselves. Perkz is still sitting on this bottom side, but he's hurting a wave of minions. Let's see if anyone joins him. Mithy's actually taking a trip through jungle to try and get some vision himself. Flash Wolves are none the wiser for now.
And this is what we haven't seen enough of all tournament. We've seen Assassins trying to split push with no supporting vision. If you have a strong LeBlanc, support rolls in, puts down 2 wards, exits. Suddenly the LeBlanc split push is that much safer, that much more predictable. As turret dive going to be at least threatened from G2.
Oh, Mithy's coming in right now. Trick stopped up for just a second, but it looks like they're focused on this tower. Perkz goes around the backside, but it was just a fake out, and MMD now is coming for the flank up. Domin is on for Expect, but can he live through it? Mithy getting chunked, but he's got the Grey Health still available. Nommed up by Mithy. Grey Health is getting melted through. Perkz just can't get enough done. Flashing forward, it's MMD looking for another auto. Mithy flashing, there's Maple, he gets one, and they're going for a Realm Warp. Right into Expect, no, he gets just out of vision range and jukes them out. It ends up being a 1 for none.
Seems like there's a bit of a split call there for Perkz especially. Really licked his chops. He's like, okay, where am I going? What's my target? Took a long time. By the time he went in, wasn't able to burst anyone down, backs away, and now G2 decides to lose fights. Maple getting frisky, but probably not going to be a turret dive.
No, doesn't have to go too deep himself. Trick is stopped for what seems like ages right there. And now Flash Wolves don't have a wave to contend on this tower, but Perkz was pushed back from the top side by MMD, and now he burns his teleport. He could get canceled out for just a moment. He does. MMD was wise to it, and he has to blast Cone away. Wasted summoner spell.
I mean, Perkz, you know, of course, got caught in the shop famously in this Ryze versus LeBlanc matchup, and now we see him just not respecting the fact that Knowledge could just walk up, cancel, would of course sin the teleport animation through the fog of war. Didn't need a vision of that brush to be able to see that. So canceled out, teleport now counts for nothing, and suddenly can't really park Expect or Perkz in a sideline and expect too much when the teleports are down on both members.
Yeah, this is looking harder for G2 right now, and seems like they keep trying to play the same game. They might need a little bit of help, and in 30 seconds there will be a Mountain Dragon spawning, so maybe they can try to grab that one, but they're running out of options in the mid for right now. Betty and Sword Art are parked there. Mithy's still trying to push vision up through the river. It's going to be harder for him to do. But the game plan of get behind Expect and let him charge down the line has just not been enough after the first 10 minutes of this game.
And understandably, been focused on the game plan of G2, given they took the early lead, they had the early snowball. Let's check in with Flash Wolves, because you look at this team comp, Jhin famous for his long range, you're always like, okay, who's interrupting that curtain call? It's not really anyone on the side of G2 apart from a flank from Perkz. But guess what? We talked about how G2 needs to put down their vision, move with it, look for picks. You get defensive vision up for the Jhin. He spots the LeBlanc in front of him. We're going to be very happy to open up at 1,000+ range, and no one is there to interrupt. So sure, if there's consistent threat of LeBlanc from nowhere, maybe that'll be something as G2 try to get a little bit creative with an early Baron, but spotted out by a ward.
There we go, Karza. Chains were on there, but not enough burst damage. Perkz has not been able to find a kill this game, still only sitting on the Morellonomicon and now the Blasting One. But meanwhile, G2 was able to clear out that vision. Dragon is, of course, on the table. Flash Wolves have some wards behind the pit as well, and Perkz is still hunting around. Always a dangerous threat, but he just doesn't have the burst to take down anyone. Karza and Betty, the most squishy members, and here comes the Tom Kench, but Maple is a little bit far out there, but he's cut off for now. Realm Warp coming in, trying to make his great escape, and he does. Right behind.
And no interrupt coming through, so able to just get out with the Realm Warp, like you said, Pyra. Set up around the Mountain Drake. First two Drakes kind of against the run of play went to Flash Wolves, and then when you check in the comps, and especially how G2 have kind of been stalled out, you'd have to say, against LeBlanc or Renekton, and especially Renekton that one lane as hard as he did in terms of getting the turret, 3 Drakes in 23 minutes is probably more than G2 could have afforded to pass over.
Give up a mountain on top of the Cloud Notions they already had. Trick was meanwhile preoccupied with his red buff, and he's going to get that taken away from him.
Rude.
Spider going skittering, and yeah, Flash Wolves, they say this map is ours now.
But that's the thing, is that's exactly the game plan expected from G2. Pushing up, LeBlanc showing up, Renekton, Elise. Now it's actually them on the back foot with the scaling disadvantage. Is the disadvantage enough for it to call the game? Absolutely not. But these members of Flash Wolves are scaling up. 10-stack Rod of Ages and the completed transformation of the tier. The Archangel is going to come up very shortly. Seraph's Embrace already available. So things getting together. Suddenly the target selection for Perkz starts to get a little bit slimmer. And we already mentioned the Jhin, between Edge of Night and just the reality of how far away from fights it's going to be. It looked so clean for G2, but you can kind of look at a timestamp, especially on a VOD review, and be like, things really stalled out here and don't look like they're going to get any better.
Yeah, unfortunately for G2, they kind of put all their eggs in the snowball basket, and it started off well and good with a couple of kills and pushing up towards the top side, but that has turned the other way around as MMD absorbs a whole bunch of damage, and Expect gets grasped by the Malzahar. Sword Art coming up big with his ultimate. He's taken low now. Dominus is on, but he gets pulled back in by the dredge line. Mythy noms up Trick, and Expect has his Guardian Angel pop. G2 are contemplating taking another fight, but the curtain call.
One shot.
A lot of shots, and Sven doesn't intercept the last one with the spell shield up, but they took a lot of time there, and meanwhile, Maple was busy on mid.
We spent a lot of time complimenting Betty specifically for his Ashe, but I love where he opened up in that particular skirmish. He's going to always have great shots to open his Perkz. It's poked out pretty extensively in mid. They really want to get this out of mid lane turret, but for now, stalled out a little bit.
Yeah, definitely give Betty some credit. And team roster changes are not things that teams like the Flash Wolves really take lightly. For a long time, they stuck themselves with their core roster, and Betty is the new addition, formerly known as Double Red, coming in and honestly showing up pretty big. He's not the hyper carry late game guy that NL was, but he's definitely proved he can play these meta AD carries, not just competently, but honestly step up big and make big plays.
And his path into the Flash was such an interesting one. He lost a bit because the LMS doesn't have English broadcast, so we only get little bits of information about them, usually around the international tournaments. Was on Flash Husky for a time, mostly played competitive as a jungler, even though his secondary role was at AD carry. But in Korea, we have these players who've made that movement over from their primary role, ambition to jungle, score to jungle. Jungle to AD is so different. It's almost the least mechanical, most macro position to the most micro-intensive position in terms of AD carry. But Betty so far, Double Red at IEM Oakland, I was like, I don't know what to make of this guy. He was doing the famous rookie thing on AD carry where you're caught farming too often. Thinking of being caught.
Ooh, who's catching who right now? Expect's just going to walk right into him, and they're going to bring Mythy. All of a sudden, they want to make the big play, but they're going to have to get out of dodge right now. Teleport is canceled. They're back under a healthy turret. But Flash Wolves are feeling frisky. They're looking for a collapse on here.
How much does that turret mean, Pyro? We're not sure yet. MMD's consider it. Do they want to open up here?
Oh, this is a dangerous dance right now. Ooh, the Voidling intercepting the Cocoon. They look for MMD, but the curtain call is opened up.
Watch the
They
teleport.
nom up the Nautilus, but Expect is put right into the back line, and I don't think he's tanky enough to survive this. Sword Art is even going to live through the burst
Turning
damage
on
of
the
Perkz. And now Karza tags his way in. MMD in the front line. This is exactly how the Flash Wolves want to play it, as Maple takes down Mythy, and they're bringing the party right into the back of G2 Esports. Oh my word! Sven and Trick, the last men standing. Flash Wolves are not going to be able to finish the job, but they pick up nice 3 kills right there, and it looks like they might be turning for Baron.
And early and mid-game is well and truly over, Pyra. They thought they'd caught someone, but in fact, they were the ones who were caught. Really nice turnaround from the Flash Wolves. The teleport was the start. They're turning onto Baron. Trick is still full health. Same level as Karsa. He needs to pull out a miracle.
Well, let's see if he can do it. This Baron is taken down low. There's no vision, but Sword Art might run smack dab into him here. He's going to have to make the big play. He goes up in the air, and the spikes are flying. No, it's not going to happen, so no chance to get back any blast cones at the last second, but it is too late, and he ends up donating a kill Sword Art's way. Baron on Flash Wolves.
It was so close, though. The blast cone could have been autoed at any point by specifically Sword Art to deny it. Didn't lead to anything. They pick up the Baron, and the kill score, the scaling war. Seems like everything is being won by the Flash Wolves, as G2 right now don't really have much of an answer for where the Flash Wolves are at.
Flash Wolves honestly played out the early game as safe as they could. They conceded a little bit. MMD, some of his positioning can certainly be criticized, but it wasn't enough to really put them too far behind. And G2, they just weren't able to push the advantages. I have to give a lot of credit, a lot of praise over Maple's way, over Karza's way. It seemed like the two of them stumbled a little bit in the last series, particularly Karza, but this is definitely the highlight kind of game that we expect to see out of the caliber of these players.
Eddie walking up. They're not afraid of this LeBlanc at all.
Oh, no. Yeah, this is looking like a very different LeBlanc game than the one Perkz played against. MMD goes right on to expect. Blast Cone disengage and resets.
Well, the Blast Cone always makes me smile, so that's at least fun.
Yeah, everyone likes to play the bouncy castle every now and again.
What I want you to take away from this is that Flash Wolves really understood where they were at. Sure, MMD got caught out a couple of times, looked a bit silly on that second death under the turret, but they didn't seem to be perturbed at any point that LeBlanc and Renekton got them an early game advantage. That's exactly what those champions are picked to do. They were executed very normally, but they were always in touching distance. They never over-prioritized fighting. They just kind of tried to sneak a couple of Drakes against the run of play. The scaling started to come in. G2 got a little bit too frisky, and suddenly Flash Wolves looked a lot more comfortable. Sword Art's getting DPS down.
Yeah, Exhaust was on, though, and the Sword Art had the redemption on himself. Now,
There's an
Perkz
ultimate.
is stopped. There's the curtain call being opened. Expect is in the tank. Perkz a little low on this one. Still within range, so Expect's going to have to body block even further. And Flash Wolves, they are owning this bottom side of the jungle, looking to break into the base with the Baron-empowered minions. Maple hanging on the backside. He doesn't even need to get involved right now for the Flash Wolves to start shredding through this turret. The one Mountain Drake coming to bear. G2 just don't have enough damage to get it done, and now Sven is targeted up, eaten by Mythy for a moment. In comes Perkz fresh off the fountain. Maple delivers himself into the fight, and it is the inhibitor that they've got eyes on. Shy of 30 minutes into this game, they will knock it down and make G2's life a little rougher for the next few.
Yeah, G2 ran the show for 10 minutes, but it feels like it's been 20 minutes of domination by the Flash Wolves. So smart at locking down the LeBlancers. Okay, that one's going to be a rotational Abyssal Voyage into the mid lane, getting something, which is good to see from G2. Some nice Baron calls from them really helped them in their last series as well, but Maple walks up. Perkz, well, gets a couple autos, but can't get too much cuter than that, and
can't get too close to the Rise at this point. He's starting to really pop off, sitting on a lot of items. Let's take a look at how it started up in the top lane again, because it was G2 getting the catch off, but then this became the next story.
But again, it's another one of those cases where Betty's just having the time of his life. The terrain and the fighting behind the terrain reminds me of Deft, who was always smart on champions like Kog'Maw to open up distance, and the nth degree for Jhin, but nice target selection, playing around each other. The Realm Warp comes in. It's no party warp. This is a Death Warp coming through from the Flash Wolves. Great target selection from them. And G2, they're going to pick up their first Drake, but it's a Cloud at 31 minutes, so...
consolation prize.
I mean, you say consolation prize, but I think they're just going to be outmatched by the split push, or I guess just the front push coming through in the top lane by Flash Wolves.
At least they can get there fast to watch their towers get knocked down. Unfortunately, it's been really rough for them here at this 31-minute plus. Flash Wolves making great use of this Baron buff to knock down the rest of the towers. G2, they're going to have a lot to think about in game 2. Maybe they can get a cheeky pick off. Perkz goes in, but honestly, he's just tickling this team.
There's also the Mimic, I think, was used there as well, so that was cute. Try to draw out some cooldowns. Doesn't get the Nethergrass from Sword Art, though. Mid lane are pushed as well. We're just kind of watching the onward march of Flash Wolves. Not necessarily to the series, but certainly to game 1. Full control here, and you just look at G2, and specifically the comp they've chosen. Doesn't really have any answers, barring a pretty catastrophic mistake from Flash Wolves.
Well, Flash Wolves haven't shown any signs in this game of making those big mistakes. So
where they
big
going?
5-man, they're just going to juke it out. right over to the tower. In comes Perks, but it's a smidgen too late, and they're going to be able to get that one nice and quick. MMD still tanking up the front, and he dredge lines away. Chains land on him. This is the chance, but Mythic gets bopped down to 0 without even using the Grey Health. Karza comes in, nearly takes down Sven. Maple finishes the job. It's a double kill. Trick is skittering away. Betsy's having the game of his life, shooting the curtain call shots, and his only Perks remaining as the GA brings Expect back up for the moment. He'll be able to heal up on Fountain, but their base is falling to pieces.
Yeah, Minion Waves pushing in multiple lanes. This is gonna be the first game, not a 45 or 50-minute slog. A really smartly played game from Flash Wolves. They knew their windows. Sure, Perks are gonna try to be cute, but this should be the game.
Close that window right on G2's face in 32 and a half. Flash Wolves take game 1 of our grand finals.
As Flash Wolves finally return to their level of play we saw in previous days. This Flash Wolves was largely absent in their last series against H2K. Much credit to H2K with how they started that series, but the Flash Wolves have finally shown up on this final day of IEM Katowice, and they look pretty peerless compared to the other teams at this tournament.
Absolutely. This is the quality we expect from the LMS top team. And honestly, Flash Wolves, they've been in a lot of international tournaments. They know to hang tough, even through the long days like this. Very impressive showing from them. They had a big series against H2K, but to come out, shake their heads clear of that one, and get ready to take on G2, that's an impressive feat.
I guess they warmed themselves up with a series just beforehand. It was a very long one, just like G2 played earlier, but it was an ordered one. I love how they respected how strong G2 were in the early game, but also were decisive to turn around the game where they saw an opportunity. Very nice stuff from them.
Well played from G2 Esports. They are one game away from claiming victory, claiming the trophy. Well, we'll find out. We're going to a quick break before game 2.
Flash Wolves came out swinging in that first game of the series. Despite the LeBlanc being let through, they knew how to handle it, and G2 didn't really get a grip on the game.
Pretty easy to handle a QSS rush LeBlanc, though.
Okay.
I was gonna say, is it them not knowing how to handle it, or him not knowing how to pilot it? Like Mercury Treads, QSS, you lose all snowball.
Yeah, that was, it definitely was the defensive itemization choices coming out from our G Fuel MVP Perks. And so it's, you know, I think when you've got to look at this game, it's Flash Wolves that we expected to see, but they were really punishing G2 in a lot of ways.
Well, the G2 started quite strong, right? At least for Nectin, you have so much pressure on the top side. They went top, they punished the Nautilus, they get the first break. You're like, great, this is exactly what we want to see. Now let's see how they add LeBlanc to the equation of Snowball, and it just completely fell apart.
And you have such a front-loaded early game composition that you can't afford to throw away any sort of advantage like that. And then it goes back to the overextension into top lane. Like, yes, they trade towers for that, but then you start getting that pocket gold back for the Flash Wolves. They start getting their items. And if Perks is delaying his power spikes through his itemization, like suddenly this Rise is a bigger deal than it should be.
And that's exactly why when you're ahead, you don't want to be trading. You see these games kind of stall out because you want to get advantages while denying every possible advantage or gain from your opposition, and that's not what happened. The more trades, the more these compositions accelerate, and the more Flash Wolves benefits.
It really didn't feel like, we talked about what we expected from G2 going into this series, and they need to be firing on all cylinders to have made it through this, Flash Wolves game and actually pose a significant threat. It felt like every single cylinder that they tried to fire was a blank. I mean, I don't feel like any lane from G2 really stepped up to the occasion here.
I mean, again, echoing what Crumb said, Trick and Expect put them on the right foot, but that said, like Flash Wolves should know, that's the lane that you're going to gank early because it's the Renekton one. It has that dive potential with the Elise. You know it's going to be the pushing lane, so it should be punished. But again, very different inconsistencies with Flash Wolves. Against G2, for whatever reason, they look amazing, so maybe they just have the better read on this team, whereas against H2K, they were really struggling.
It feels like Flash Wolves just, they wanted it more. They came in and, they
Oh, come on.
no, but they were in the IEM Oakland final. And, they know what it feels like to taste defeat at a final of the IEM. And now they're here. And
let me tell you about tasting defeat in G2 on an international stage.
I realized that was a terrible line of conversation, so we're going to switch it up.
Ooh, because I want it.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to build the hype here about this like drive and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, the thing is this is twice now that G2 have reached for kind of this 1-3-1 composition and fallen flat a little bit. Yes, they did win their previous one with the Zed game, but it was almost thrown. And so maybe this just isn't the style that suits them. Maybe they go back to kind of more the 5v5 run-at-you composition, or maybe they try to branch out their power more. Like, for a fact that Flash Wolves are probably going to take you late game, although I guess not for G2. They probably average much lower game time against them. So why not just meet them there?
Absolutely, and what I want to see from G2 in this next game, most likely just going to be on the red side. They're going to have to ban LeBlanc pretty straightforward. You don't want to have Maple take that pick, but you have the Maokai early on, and the Sivir, even though it's not such a fantastic pick, the Jhin just does so much work. Jhin, Varus, the Ashe. Please, can we see a Sven Ashe? Because we know he can play. It's an exceptional pick, and just something that's a little bit more reliable for Mithy than the Tam Kench right now.
Exactly. I just want them to get a pushing bottom lane. I want them to stop sacking their bottom lane by putting Mything on that Kench.
So let's go into this next draft phase in terms of what we were expecting. G2, they're going to ban the LeBlanc probably. They didn't feel super comfortable with it there. I don't think they're going to let, obviously, Maple get his hands on it. What would you like to see changed up? I mean, you've talked about they've not been executing this 1-3-1 very well. Is it a case of just saying Maokai priority or, get Mithy onto something a little bit more playmaking, for instance, less defensive?
I think Fruskaran was right on the money here. Just meet Flash Wolves late game. I mean, they drafted like pure late game. You got Kha'Zix, Rise, Nautilus, and just the Malzahar that was such a pick that is very difficult for you to deal with if you're not having champions that easily itemize into a QSS. A pick like LeBlanc has a very difficult time adding a magic resist activatable item with no other benefits into her kit, and so it really slows down that early game power. Meet them late game, find a way to just 5v5.
And we've seen G2 in this situation before, down at the start, and then they find their way back in. It's not alarm, it's kind of alarm bells, but not super alarm bells for G2, because we know that they can step up a level when they absolutely need to.
Yeah, but at the same time, for whatever reason, Flash Wolves just seem to have their number or have the better read on them. Again, like G2 looked great against pretty much every other team, barring that one LeBlanc Snowball game against the Rocks Tigers. Looked strong against UOL, but for whatever reason, they come into Flash Wolves and just
fall flat on their face.
Well,
fizzle out.
It definitely was a strong performance from Flash Wolves, and I think G2 will reflect on that performance and come in stronger to the next game. And speaking of the next game, we're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we could be facing the final game here at IEM Katowice, the final game of this championship potentially, or can G2 push us to a third?
to feel like a